Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video I want to talk to you about the built-in version control framework for Emacs, VC, and how I am using it to manage my Git projects. VC has become my main interface to version control. I use it practically every day, and even though I have Magit installed on my system, I only use Magit for some advanced or exotic operations. Otherwise, I use VC. So what I want to do here is do an overview of VC's features and how I am using it. So this will include the defaults as well as my extensions, and these extensions include lots of custom commands and of course custom key bindings. I will provide the link to my Emacs setup in case you want to copy any of this. So let's start our demo, first with some random content and then proceed to some real-world scenario. So let's start right away. I have over here a directory that is already under version control, and I want to create a new file. Let's call it testing text. And this is a new file, and I want to say this is a test, this is a test, and I want to save my changes. The way you interact with VC, which is what I want to do right now, is through the Ctrl+XV prefix and then another key to invoke the command that you want. When you want to find help for a key chord, you will type in the letters, so Ctrl+XV in this case, and then Ctrl+H. And this will produce a help buffer with all the keys and corresponding commands that extend that key chord that you started to type in. The command that we will be using right now is this one over here, VC next action. And this is a do what I mean kind of command. And we will see this in action. When you are in a new file, the first logical step is to register that file under version control. So Ctrl+XVV will do just that. You can see in the echo area over here where the mini buffer is, registering path to file has been successfully done, and we can also see that there is an indicator on the mode line showing us that this has just been recorded in the master branch of this repo. So Ctrl+XVV again will do the next logical action, which is to commit our changes. So what we have here is on the window here to my left is the standard log edit buffer, though the layout here is different from what you will normally get. And this is the corresponding diff. I have made it use this kind of layout. What I also added is this otherwise cosmetic change, which is a message that includes some contextual information. This will be ignored when you commit the changes, and this is the kind of comment that you already are familiar with if you use git commit on the command line, or of course if you are using Magit, you know about this already. So let's commit our changes, add a new file. It doesn't matter what we are writing right now. This is for our demo. When you are done, you just hit Ctrl+C twice and your changes have been recorded. So now you are ready to actually push these changes. But before we do that, let's produce a log of the entire project's history. So Ctrl+XV and capital L to produce a root log, as is the definition in Emacs. A root log is a log of commits for the entire repo. So we can see over here, this is the latest commit that I just made, and we can see that it is one commit ahead of the remote tracking branch. We know this is the remote branch, and we can see that this is one commit behind. We can see what that commit is. So this means that if I were to push my changes upstream to my remote, then the very first commit over here would be recorded in that remote's history, so everything would be in sync. Of course, I don't want to do that now, but let's come back here to the directory editor and let's revisit this file because I realized that I forgot to write something. So let's add this, hello world. What I want to do now is I want to record those changes as well, but I don't want to produce a second commit. Instead, what I want to do is I want to amend the previous commit. So you will notice that there is a header here at the top, so over here, which says amend, and you can toggle this to a yes value, so Control-C, Control-A, and this will mean that you are amending the previous commit. First, I want to get the message of the previous commit, which is very easy because Emacs stores a ring of commits. So this is the history of commits. So meta and p will take me to the previous item in the history. I also have a command to search through the history with completion. So I can go and check over there or just type in the mini buffer, you know, standard stuff, and insert that text instead of Control P and Control N to go through the history. So anyhow, I have the summary of the last commit, and I want to toggle the amendment status. So this is an amendment, add new file with hello world. So like this. So let's commit our changes. And let's check the log again. We can see now that the log is still one commit ahead of the remote tracking branch, but we can see, of course, that the summary has changed. So I have successfully amended the last commit that I made. When you are in a log buffer, you can just hit D to get a diff for the committed point. Of course, if you have a region and you do D, it will produce a change log, diff rather, for all the commits inside of the region. So that's always very helpful. So now I have made this change, and if I were to hit a key, it would send this change upstream. It would push my changes. Of course, this is some dummy text. This is some demo content. I don't want to actually push this because this is my dot files. This is a real project, so I don't want to mess around with those gimmicks. I want to revert the changes. I want to reset back to a state where my project is in a stable state. I know that things would work here. So I place the point on the commit I want to go, so the commit before where I was, so this is the second line, and I have a command for this. This is not standard, so I have a command for this which I bind to capital R, and this is asking me run git reset with the soft flag on this commit, yes or no. I will say no, because I don't want to perform a soft reset. I want to perform a hard reset. Of course, the differences are discussed in the man pages of Git. The documentation of Git is top quality, so of course you have to read that as well. But basically, soft means to revert the commits, but keep the changes in place. Whereas a hard reset means to revert the commits and discard all the changes. So this is what I want to do over here. So I type Control-U and my command, and now it is asking me whether I want to do a hard reset, and the answer is an unapologetic yes. So I have removed that file, and we can just check with dired over here. We can see after I regenerate the buffer that this file has been removed. So that's very nice. Now let's proceed to another interface of VC, the so-called VC dir. and I bind this to control X VP, which is a mnemonic for project. It always goes to the root of the current project's directory. So normally vcdir will list some items here if you have any changes. Now I have none, so it lists nothing. But you will notice over here that there is a stash, and the stash is something that I don't see being mentioned very often. I feel that people do not use that functionality all that much, though it is quite helpful in a number of scenarios. So the stash means to produce a snapshot of your repo and store that in a safe place. So operations such as the destructive git reset that I performed earlier, git reset hard, will not actually delete those snapshots that you have. The stash is a safe place. So you can always go and check your stash over here, and I can check what I have here. I have some changes that I want to actually commit. This is the real thing. And what I want to do in this case is I want to apply this diff to my actual project. So this is like having saved my changes to a different file, and then this file is a patch, and I am bringing everything back into the fold. So I can just hit the letter P over here, but before I do that, I want to highlight the fact, which is a very intriguing feature, that when you place the point over the stash header, a special key map is activated that is not otherwise active when you are in any other context. So this is fantastic. I will be checking the implementation for that, because if you can have a key map for this heading, it means that you can, in principle, have a separate key map for example, this one, and then for this one, and so on. So, for example, you could have something to manage your remotes with a couple of keys from here, and another one to switch branches from here, and so on and so forth. And of course, in every other context of Emacs. Anyhow, so I want to be over here, and I want to pop this stash, so remove it from the stash and apply it directly to my project. So now I can see this is how you will normally see the vcdir buffer. You can see that there is nothing in the stash now, and you can also see that there are files that are edited, that have been edited, and so you can go check the diff for each of those files, and you can see already what happens over there. If you press capital D, you will produce a root diff that includes every file in the directory. Or if you want to mark some items, so like you do with dired, for example, and you hit D, it will operate on the marked items. Not to bother you with this, whenever you are in an unfamiliar major mode, or in general, whenever you want to get help for the major mode that you are in, use Control HM. This is something that should become second nature. All the Control H commands are very helpful. They make a real difference in your life as an Emacs user, and they are what can really make the difference when you are searching for something, and something that may not be readily available online. So for example, when you are here, you can always check the individual help for that command, and if you are really into it, you can also check the source code, and if you follow this path, you will start writing your own E-Lisp before you even realize it. So let's come over here and let's mark our files and actually do a real commit right now. But before I do the commit, I want to show you something that is kind of a personal convention, and this is how I write a scope for each commit summary. You can see over here that here it says prot outline and then something, prot Emacs and then something, prot VC, delete, prot Emacs, prot VC, and so on and so forth. This is a short prefix that gets extracted from the file name, and I use this prefix as a way to provide some more context to the commit summary of what I am writing. So in this case, I want to, because I will submit 2 files, let's see this in practice. Now I want to add the prefix, but because I have 2 files, I have a command for this. Because I have 2 files though, I have to select the one for which to produce this prefix. I could select it from here, or I could use minibuffer completion. You know how these things work. And I just want to select this file, and you can see that out of all this file, it extracts just the thing that I want. This is a very helpful command. I use it all the time in my .files repo. It is a convention of mine, and this is the beauty of Emacs. This is not a command that is useful in general, but it is useful for me, so of course there it is. And let's actually write a commit message, the summary rather. Add new git log grep command. So that's it. I don't want to elaborate on this, so I could write a message over here. I don't want to elaborate, but I just want to show you another command that I have, which is again sort of a private convention. And this is the ability to insert a number of recent commits starting from the head of the current project. So let's say I want to insert the last 5 commits. I don't, but for our purposes, you can see over here, and this is written in the message of the commit. So this would actually be written, it would actually be visible, unlike the message over here, unlike that comment, this would be actually recorded. I don't want to do that, but it's something for you to know. It's something that I use and I find very helpful when I need to provide some further context for people who are checking the logs, or for me. So anyhow, let's submit our changes. And now that I have done this, I can just hit a key and this will push the changes upstream. Let's do it. Let's do it right away. Capital P, and this will run git push, and this is how it goes. So I have submitted the changes, and look at how simple VC is, because let's do it right now, a quick test. So let's do a test over here. So I have written something, I am focusing on the buffer, I don't want any extractions, I don't want any distractions rather. So I just want to commit my changes, Control X VV, and then you type in something, Control C twice, and then Control X V and P to submit your changes, and then you are back to where you started. Just to say that this command that I have over here, no changes, of course. So let's do this. Just to say 1 second, and let's also have something like this. It doesn't really matter. Just to say that the Control X VV that I have, it will always change the layout to this specific thing that you see over here, but it will restore the previous window configuration upon exiting, so you will never lose context of where you were. So this is very helpful as well. So it is a very streamlined, a very efficient way of going from writing to committing and back to writing. It is a very nice workflow. I really appreciate it and all it brings to the table. Now let's show you some more commands. Let's show actually this grep thing that I have, and let's look at the code a bit, because fundamentally this is what we are doing. You can see over here shell command and then git log grep basically. And you just output this to a file, but let's see it in action. Control X, V, and G is the key binding for this specific command, and it is asking me for a pattern. Let's say, I don't know what actually I should search for. Let's say modus. So yeah, I get a log of commits that include the word modus. Of course, you can use regex, regular expressions. So let's do something with regular expressions. Maybe I have some history here. Okay, yeah, I have a check over here. So let me write this in. So rebuild, I wanted to include the word rebuild or the word log. I tried this earlier. So you can see again that we get a log. If we invoke this command with a universal prefix, so Control U, it will also show the diffs of the corresponding commits, and this is very helpful. Okay, this is a long log, and my hardware is underpowered, so please work with me. So you can see that I can now see the diff and the commit, everything in one place. And of course, the value of having diffs is that you can also search within this buffer. So for example, if I search using iSearch or occur or consult line or whatever, you get the idea. You can always find what you are looking for. And this is just one command, the git log grep command. Of course, if you need to perform more advanced searches, you can always use the command line. I just use the most common grep that I need. For the rest, I default to the command line, which seldom happens. Other commands that we can use, even though they are not useful right now, is Control X, V, and F. For example, to fetch changes. Let's see them. If we want to fetch changes, it's this one over here, log incoming. If we want to pull the changes, VC update. Let's go to an actual project that will probably have something. Let's go to the directory editor. So this is the git source of Emacs, and let's pull some changes. Hopefully there are quite a few actually. So those have been pulled in, and let's check the logs over here to see what we have. Okay, I can see. By the way, I made a recent, I sent a recent patch which adds some faces for VC dir. You can see over here. So that's very helpful as well. So I have lots of other little commands, and I have shown these before, but let's actually limit this to 10, for example, so that we don't have a huge log. So I want to show you one that I use quite often, and this is the ability to produce a patch for the committed point. If I hit the letter C, it will ask me for a directory, and let's use the root of this project, and let's regenerate the buffer. You can see that I have the patch over here. So imagine how quick it is to make changes. So you just go to a file, you write something, you do Control X, V, V, and then once you have recorded the change, you go to the log and you produce a patch, just like this, very quickly. So that's a way to produce one patch, but if you want to produce a multitude of them, you just write a region like this, and you do the same thing, and you output the range as a patch. So of course, you can always check the logs. Let's see it over here in action. You can always check the logs of a project or the commits that you have made, and then produce patches for those. Oh, sorry. Let's delete everything here. We don't want to actually pollute this directory. I have some others that I showed, some other commands that I have shown, but I don't want to show them again. The idea is that you can, using this very line over here, shell command, that's the one thing. The other one is process lines. So this one, shell command, is when you want to output to a buffer, whereas process lines is when you want to use completion. So for example, Control X VS is a command I have to use completion, mini buffer completion that is, and in doing so I can show a commit. So for example, if I write grep, you can see that it is narrowing to this one, and I can see the commit right away. So that's very helpful, for example. So by using process lines or shell command, we can already get basically every Git commit to behave nicely inside of Emacs. There are others as well, other extras that I have, but I don't want to show again everything. I think the point stands. Let's actually narrow this buffer a bit just to the commands. Sorry. So what I'm doing here, in case you don't know, I am using the command consult, let's see, consult focus lines. And what this does is it's an interactive way to narrow the buffer to what is matching a certain regular expression. Very helpful command always. And what I did here is produce a log with iMenu, and then I narrowed this buffer. This uses embark collect. You can check my backlog. I have talked about my completion framework. I have talked about embark and consult and all the other accoutrements of my completion framework. So you can see how powerful this is. And I have gotten a narrowed buffer here with the commands that I have for VC. And some of those are just little extras that I bind to key bindings. Some are for the log edit buffer in particular, and I won't bother you with all of those. You can always check my code. The idea is to show you that VC is not, of course, as nice of an experience as Magit. It doesn't have that interactivity of Magit. It doesn't focus on Git. It doesn't expose the advanced features of Git. But once you know what you are doing, once you have a specific workflow in place, for example, in my case, I seldom use other commands than those. For example, I don't interactively rebase my history all the time. That is something you can do very efficiently from within Magit. But if you don't have any need for it, why bother? So, for example, I don't need that feature to be readily available. When I need it, I can switch to Magit. That's the beauty of having choice in the Emacs space. So what I wanted to show you here is that VC is, once you get used to it, is a very streamlined workflow. You just hit Ctrl+X VV, write your changes, commit them, Ctrl+X VP to push them, and you can also use VCDir for more involved operations and things of that nature, and the logs to check what it is that you want to check. You can check the history, you can check using a grep. Maybe you have some other specific need, you can use that as well. There is also a blame feature, you can always use that. I think I have it somewhere here. Blame region or file, again, shell command. This is our workhorse, shell command and process lines. So that's all I have to share with you, folks. I think I have not forgotten anything. Yeah, that's all there is to it. The changes that I have made are part of a minor mode, so this changes quite a few things. So you have to, if you want to copy things, you have to make sure that you check the code so you understand what is going on, so you don't inadvertently make some change that you wouldn't want. So that's always something to bear in mind. That's all for now, folks. Thank you very much for your attention, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.